Previously on From.
Megan opened the window to a terrible monster, after which Boyd showed Frank what came of it. Julie told her younger brother that his fairy tale friend Norman was killed, and that this world was not fair. While their mother tried to reassure him, there were no such things as monsters. On the road they saw a huge tree that blocked their path, and ravens circled in the air. After the funeral, when Jim asked how to get to the highway, the sheriff pointed the way up the hill, after which the trailer got into an accident and slid into a ditch. Little Ethan's leg was pierced by a table leg. Toby climbed out of the second car with a smashed head, and after him Jade also came too. But while Toby lay in the hospital, Sarah stabbed his throat with a screwdriver. The sheriff asked Christy to stay the night with him and Ethan's father in the trailer, while the rest drove into town. Night fell and the monsters came out to hunt. Stuck in the trailer under pouring rain and surrounded by monsters, Christy and Jack tried to stabilize Ethan's condition. He had gone into convulsions all over his body from the pain shock, so they needed to wait a few seconds. When the convulsions stopped, Christy said his pulse was stable and he was breathing, so everything was going to be fine. Suddenly they heard knocking on the glass, then a voice from outside offering them help. Ethan's father asked why they weren't letting them in, and decided he would do it himself. But Boyd grabbed him in a chokehold, telling him the truth: those outside were not people. Meanwhile, the people who had not made it to town in the truck were trying to get to the community, falling, stumbling, not understanding what was happening. Inside the house, one of the residents saw through the window as they approached and immediately went to the wall bell, alerting everyone that there were people outside. Fatima ran to the front door where a guard stood and asked why he wasn't opening it. Ellis was out there, but the guard simply replied no. Finally they stepped onto the porch, and panic set in, because time was running out and no one wanted to let them inside. Suddenly from around the corner appeared monsters and human guys, one of whom was a pleasant young man who somehow hypnotized Julie, but Kevin shot him in time. Donna, the community leader, coming down the stairs, ordered the guard to let the people in so they wouldn't die outside. In the end, the crowd ended up inside the house, where complete chaos immediately broke out. Donna, in a high commanding tone, told the strangers to get down on the floor and then had their hands tied because there was a protocol they had to follow. Tabitha, in bewilderment, asked why they were doing this since they hadn't done anything. Meanwhile, in the trailer, Christy asked, "Have they gone?" Boyd answered that he wasn't sure, and then told Jim that those outside were not people. But if you hang the protective charm inside and draw the curtains, the monsters won't be able to get in. Ellis placed Jade on a special bed, then strapped his legs and arms with belts, all according to the security protocol. Trudy entered the room. She asked which car he had come from, and noticed the expensive watch on Jade's wrist. Ellis told her not to touch anything, but Trudy kept insisting he wouldn't need it here, and besides, he was very handsome and attractive. Ellis repeated that she should not touch anything, then left on other business. In the adjacent room, Tabitha sat tied to a table. Donna came in saying her daughter was fine, then untied her hands. Tabitha immediately tried to run, but the guard brought her back to the room. When she had calmed down a little, Donna explained that at first this seems pointless, but these are necessary precautions. It's unclear how strangers will behave on the first night, and that neither she nor her daughter were in any danger. Everyone in this house and every resident of this town had once been in their position. Donna continued, "There are things you need to know about this place and how everything works here. Do you believe in monsters?" Meanwhile, on the first floor in the kitchen sat Julie, tied to a chair, when a man named Victor came in. He said hello, then passing by the girl, he took a jar of peaches from the pantry. With interest he began to explain that Donna actually forbids them from taking anything, but sometimes leaves room for maneuver. At first I wanted to open the jar upstairs, but I can share it with you. Julie sat in fear and silence, not trying to answer his questions. He became curious about why exactly two cars had appeared on the road at the same time, and at that moment Fatima came in. She immediately reminded Victor that he was scaring the girl and told him to take his peaches and go to his room. The atmosphere eased when Fatima introduced herself. With kindness in her voice, she continued to explain to Julie the rules by which newcomers had to be kept tied until morning, and also that everyone here gives 100% for the common safety. Moreover, if Julie did not cause any trouble, Fatima would untie her hands and show her something interesting. Julie agreed. Then they went into a room where many drawings hung on the walls, all drawn by Alice. Approaching the window, Fatima explained that the curtains must absolutely be kept drawn, as it makes it harder for the monsters to see them. Sometimes they try to call people by name and ask to be let in, but that must never be done, as it leads to death. Meanwhile, the monsters outside the trailer were knocking and laughing, repeating something about offering help. Jin started to get nervous. He asked what would happen if they came inside. Boyd explained, weapons don't work against them. You just need to wait it out. The monsters can only come in if you let them in yourself. Suddenly the blows on the trailer intensified, which made Christy start to panic, crying out, what if they break in or the protective charm falls? Boyd reminded her, these monsters always do this. They try to mess with your head so you make a mistake. But forget about what's outside. You need to focus on saving the boy. When the panic passed, Christy said, now we need to pull out the table leg. Sheriff, you hold the boy by his legs, and you, Jack, keep his head level. Christy slowly began to pull the piece of wood from Ethan's leg. It was very painful for him. Centimeter by centimeter she finally finished, then asked Boyd to press on the wand while she prepared for the next medical procedure. At the same time in the school building, Nurse Gina was playing chess with old Mr. Real. When she lost again, he told his story. When he came to America, he didn't speak any English at all, but by playing chess with people they understood each other without words. Then he remembered his son Kenny and became so agitated that he had to be taken down to the basement. While in the adjacent room, Toby lay in bed with a punctured throat. Sarah walked around near him, talking to the voices in her head. Suddenly the voices suggested an idea of how to conceal Toby's murder. She walked up to him, said, please forgive me, and with a little effort pulled the screwdriver from his throat. Then the voices told her to take a scalpel from the top drawer, with which she could cut Toby's body to make it look like a monster attack. Half an hour later, Sarah was already standing in the bathtub, washing off the blood of the man she had killed. Near the door, her older brother Nathan appeared, asking if everything was all right. She opened the door, and with the words, I had no choice, embraced him tightly. Then she added, will you help me? And in the school building where Sarah had killed Toby, Nurse Jenna put old Mr. Liu to sleep. He said that when Christy is not there, the place becomes very terrible. After covering him with a blanket, she decided to check on the young man lying on the drip. Entering the ward, her face showed her horror when she saw Toby's body slashed to shreds. Running out of there, she came upon an open front door through which monsters were already entering. Hoping to somehow save herself, she went down to the basement and closed the door. Meanwhile, Kenny was running around the community, protesting that they were tying people to chairs with ropes. Ellis came up and began explaining that they had prepared a room for them on the 3rd floor, and spoke of Donna, who might seem too strict, but they had still opened the door for them when they could have simply left it shut. He also brought a large bottle of potato moonshine so they could relax. Later, they were already sitting at the table, drinking and talking peacefully. Father hath retold how whenever he stopped at the clinic, old Mr. Yu always tried to get him into a game of chess. Then Kenny recalled how his father had made him play chess from an early age, and how much he had not wanted to. Then, with tears in his eyes, he explained that he was at his limit after the deaths of Lauren and Megan Pratt, and would not be able to take it if Boyd and Christy perished in that cursed trailer. Upstairs, Ellis went to his room, took off his blood-soaked shirt, and lay down on the bed to rest, but suddenly noticed Julie sitting across from him. He immediately jumped up and put on a robe so as not to embarrass the girl. With a gentle apologetic whoop, Ellis said sorry for having to tie her to a chair, but she was no longer upset about it. On the same floor, Donna had finished explaining the situation in which Tabitha and her family found themselves. Even after everything she had seen, it all felt unreal. Then Donna got up to pour them drinks and began to tell a story about her late sister. They had been driving together on that same road just before sunset when they suddenly saw a tree lying across their path. Turning the car around, they drove back, and 100 meters away, right in the middle of the road, stood one of those monsters. When her sister stepped out onto the road with a weapon, it instantly tore her face off, and Donna, running for her life, fled into the forest and hid in the bushes. That is how people used to survive here, crawling into bushes or hiding somewhere, praying to live until dawn. Donna had calmed down somewhat, but realized she could still hear her sister's screams. The monsters had not simply killed her, they had tortured her. These creatures loved to hunt, loved to play, loved to draw out the pleasure. 3 years had passed, and her sister's screams still had not left her head. At the same time in the trailer, Christy had set up a drip for the boy and explained to Jim that they had very few medical supplies, since most of what they had came when an ambulance had accidentally driven up to them. Finally, Ethan woke up, saying he was in a great deal of pain, and then he continued, "I saw a lake of tears with drawings hanging on the wall. There were many drawings made with children's crayons that were then put up on the refrigerator." A couple of minutes later, Christy saw Jim take off the protective charm and ask how it worked. Suddenly, through a broken window in the roof, one of the monsters began to climb inside. Christy woke up screaming in a cold sweat. Boyd explained to her that it was just a dream. Then he said the sun had finally set, meaning they had survived the night in the trailer. A little later, Tabitha, Julie, and Kenny arrived at the accident site to find out what had happened to their loved ones. They saw them coming out onto the road unharmed. Everyone began to embrace each other with tears in their eyes, asking if they were all right. That same morning, Sarah was telling her brother a story about a girl who was in a room full of broken glass. And when she tries to gather the pieces into a hole, they cut deeper and deeper into her skin and she bleeds. But she keeps trying because she knows the answer exists. Then Sarah spoke about the voices that had prompted her to stage the murder as a monster attack, because only that way could they escape this place. Her brother asked what she had done. "I did not lock the front door." Christy and Kenny arrived at the school building, where they found the protective charm lying on the floor. Then they quickly went down to the basement, where they found the nurse torn to pieces. Kenny slowly walked to the boiler room, where he saw his father lying on the floor, torn apart. And in the big house, Julie was entertaining Ethan, while he looked out the window at a strange boy in white clothes, who showed him a sign to be quiet.